Hello.
Our story begins a month after the Battle of Geonosis. The Jedi had been assigned their different attack groups. The droid forces at this point had begun to descend on the galaxy. The Republic amassed their forces on Coruscant and then began to deploy them. The Jedi had become generals in the war, and Anakin was one of those generals. His legion had some of the early war combat, but nothing too terrible. These skirmishes were just the beginning of what would become a very bloody and drawn-out war. The beginning of the Clone Wars was what the Republic hoped to be a short stint with the Separatists, especially after the victory of Geonosis, but that was further from the truth. It also didn't help the entire war was being controlled by two individuals, but no one had to know that. Anakin, during the first month away from Coruscant and on the battlefront, felt the weight of his distance in his relationship slipping in on him. He assumed he'd be able to just jump into a relationship and handle being away from it, but that was further from the truth. The relationship started really out of nowhere, and the basis for a strong bond had yet formed. Anakin, while being on this active battlefront, was able to forget about during the battles, but for the most part it sat on the back of his mind during everything. When the war wasn't happening before his own eyes, he was left to dwell on his emotions surrounding the matter for longer than even he would like to. This really irked him, and he wished he could do something about it. Something that didn't help was the fact that Padmé was also extremely busy. She was actively trying to find a means to resolve the war, which was very against her own and her constituents' mantras. Not many people wanted the war, but that did begin to change, thanks to Palpatine. As a politician, he was able to motivate other politicians to do what he wanted them to do, which for Palpatine was enforcing them to buy into the war effort. He did this very simply by lining their pockets with credits. War was very profitable, and every politician knew that. The morality went out of the way even more so because the clones weren't even Republic citizens, they were property. That's how the citizens saw them, and that's how the politicians saw them. They were the cannon fodder brigade. As long as the citizens didn't have to die, then it wasn't a big deal, especially considering everyone inside of the Senate just wanted re-election anyways. So why would they care what their constituents wanted as long as they flaunted some idealistic version of what they would do in office? Sure, they would serve their term out, but why do it with your heart full of enthusiasm when what you did didn't determine your pay? The politicians could roll over and die and still make an awesome amount of credits, so why not just do that? Without the dying part, obviously. Why work hard when in reality you could just make bank, make out like a bandit, and suggest to your constituents that the war wasn't enabling anyone to do anything productive? Padmé, Bail, and Mon saw this from their peers, and their delegation in 2000 decidedly worked against it. Padmé's eagerness to end the war made it increasingly difficult for her and Anakin to talk. Her days were busy, and her after-hours work was even more tantalizing. Whenever she had time, Anakin was in a skirmish or hunkered down in meetings and talks about military strategy. After 2 months, before the Separatist invasion of Christophsis, Anakin's legion returned to Coruscant, momentarily before their redeployment. Skywalker was able to see Padmé, and he, right there and then, decided that it was time to end the war for himself. Instead of being formal about it, he simply never returned to the Jedi Temple and cut off his communications from the Jedi. He kept his lightsaber and got rid of his robes. Eventually, Obi-Wan did try and come to find out what happened to him, and when he arrived at Padmé's residence on Coruscant, he learned that Anakin had left the Order for Padmé. Not for nothing, he was very surprised. More so that Anakin never said anything to anyone, but he understood. In his own way, he was saddened, but for the rest of them, he was happy that Anakin could go out and find happiness he needed and longed for. That's all that ever mattered to Obi-Wan anyways. Anakin would eventually be told about this encounter between Padmé and Obi-Wan, and he'd be very thankful for Obi-Wan's acceptance. Padmé also told him that Obi-Wan would always be around if Anakin needed someone to talk to, which was something else that he was very thankful for. Anakin over the coming days would learn of the difference between love and lust. Their relationship had love within it, but its foundational structure was rigid at best. They needed to spend time developing their bond with each other, and while Padmé didn't necessarily mind that Anakin was living with her rent-free, he also couldn't bug her all day because, well, she was a senator. Anakin was happy to be away from the battlefront and at the very least be physically closer to her more often. But he would only see her at night, and at night she'd typically be working on research for following day discussions and meetings. For Anakin, it was a little bit difficult to understand the complexities of an adult relationship, but as it unfolded, he had to learn. Padmé had done this before having been in a relationship or even just a situationship in the past, so she could kind of outline things for Anakin, though at the very least, when Padmé wasn't swamped in work, they would have the opportunity to have date nights, which could be had and held in public. The war hadn't gotten along far enough for Anakin to really be seen in the public eye as a hero of the Republic. Sidious, on the other hand, wasn't all that upset. He simply saw this as a way for Anakin to be turned to the dark side without the whole Jedi Code or Order getting in his way. Though he could ensure he fine-tuned his plans so that he could force Anakin to join his cause on the dark side of the Force. When Anakin wasn't relaxing around Padmé's apartment, he would spend time with the Chancellor. Palpatine didn't mind as Anakin sat in his office. Because Anakin hated politics without really getting a wide perspective on what was actually going on, Palpatine began to twist fate into his hands. The new vibe Palpatine got was he would turn Anakin against Padme, or vice versa. He knew that Anakin wasn't mature enough for a relationship with someone of Padme's stature, so he'd play into it. For Palpatine, it was just a matter of Anakin choosing him or Padme. All Sidious would do is tell Anakin all the things transpiring inside the Senate chambers and how Padme's caucus was causing him immense extra work, or how the delegation of 2000 was making the war more difficult for the Republic. Without a set of basic knowledge within the Senate, Anakin would pick up everything was being told to him by Palpatine and assume it as fact. This on the surface was fine until about a week later. Anakin started rambling on about what Palpatine was saying, and Padme called him out on it. There was some obvious truth to the things that Anakin was saying, but they were opinionated stances on the Galactic Republic by a career politician who spent the last 10 years as a Supreme Chancellor. Padme told Anakin that she would explain a lot more about the Republic to him in due time, but for now, she couldn't because of a bill she was trying to counter at the moment. The banking clans had a member inside the Senate, mostly representing their home world, and they were trying to push for the Republic to spend more money on the clone army. The Republic at this point wasn't broke, but it was getting there. If the bill was signed, the Republic would purchase more clone troopers and vessels of war, and in doing so, the Republic would throw itself into bankruptcy, which, as Padme's caucus believed, would rip the foundational structure of the Republic apart. They didn't know, but this was all part of Palpatine and Dooku's elaborate plan to shred the Republic so it could form into the first galactic empire. Outside of playing house on Coruscant, the Republic began to spread out as the war heated up. The 501st had a change in leadership with the disappearance of Skywalker. They put Commander Rex into the position of power, and while on Christophsis, Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi took on his new student in Ahsoka Tano. This new master and apprentice duo would help Obi-Wan move past the loss of his former student. The Jedi as a whole moved on from Skywalker. They had a war to focus on, and so they didn't spend any time worrying about what he was doing, especially as it became readily obvious that Anakin left the Order to pursue a relationship with Padmé Amidala. For the newlyweds, they were finally able to get around to spending time with each other. The bill Padmé was actively trying to stop from passing ended up getting passed by the Senate, so she no longer had to spend so much time working to fight it. They were actually able to spend time on their basics in the relationship. Of course, they couldn't go further than Coruscant due to Padmé's job, but spending time with each other, both on the simplicities and even the deep stuff, was incredibly important. They had a very fragile communication and it needed to be worked on, and they would learn to, especially for Anakin, be open with each other. Being open is incredibly critical to longevity in any relationship, not just romantic pairings. Anakin had a horrible time expressing anything to anybody. He was very closed off as a person. These deep talks didn't happen by force, but they were natural, and if Anakin and Padme felt they needed to voice something, then they would have to. Padme didn't have the issue with this, and whenever she wanted Anakin to not do something, she'd talk to him about it. The same would go for her feelings about certain occurrences in the galaxy and things that stressed her out. Anakin, whenever asked to share his emotions, became very hostile. He hid his struggles with rage and anger, all the opposites of what should be conveyed when expressing openness. When Padme asked that he be open, he would slander her with "it's not as easy as she makes it out to be," and that was the point. He never understood that for her to open up, it was difficult too. Being open isn't about it being easy, rather being open is about being emotionally capable to talk about your feelings and struggles, what's bugging you and what's not. It's not like Padme made it hard for him. She was very open to listening and not saying a word. She never turned his complaints into pity, nor did she steal the conversation away from him anytime he tried to talk about something. She always let him get out what he needed to get out before conversing with him about why he felt as such. But it didn't matter. He still closed up and refused to open. It took serious time. But in relationships, these things have to take time. It didn't help they got married within a couple days of seeing each other for the first time in years. They spent 10 years apart and spent less than a week together before tying the knot. There was so much they needed to learn about each other, let alone understand about the other. Love languages, mannerisms, icks, and so forth. A natural relationship doesn't just jump into full throttle, and if they were apart during this time, then the relationship would only suffer more. Anakin would also have to learn to be comfortable with the fact that in the past, Padme had flings. He couldn't be mad at her for things she did in the past, and that was a big flaw in his individuality. It's not that Padme didn't have flaws, but she was firstly older than him, and secondly, a lot more experienced than he. It's not like she wasn't patient with him either. She understood, especially now that the relationship was more than just distance. There was a lot of work that had to go into this. It wasn't just deep stuff either. Date nights were fun, whether it was a night at the Opera House in the Usker district or a movie night at home picking out to some of the fine delicacies from the junk food aisle. It didn't matter. together. It was all good fun, and that's something they never, ever had before this. If Anakin hadn't left the Order, he'd actually never get to partake in a real relationship, though there was something that Padmé noticed that worried her about her boy toy. See, Anakin had a jealousy issue. There's a big difference between being jealous and being overtly controlling. Anakin's jealousy manifested into controlling. It could have been seen multiple times. Padmé talked about having a colleague or two ask her out, just her, no one else, to talk about their politics or policies or just essentially work, especially if it was a male colleague. Anakin always showed a bit of disdain, and he didn't hide it either, which is because he was a terrible liar. It's probably a good thing too, because if he wasn't, he'd push all these emotions deep down. The first time or two wasn't a big deal, but after the third or fourth, Anakin's jealousy got the best of him, and the two of them erupted into an argument. Padmé wasn't an individual who could be controlled, which is something Anakin should have known, being that she was a literal queen at the age of 14. For having held such power and poise since a young age, there was no way that she would relinquish such presence in her young adulthood. She expressed her unhappiness with his behavior towards her going out on these outings. Anakin asked what this Bail Organa wanted so badly, which was already an eye-rolling sentiment. She told him they were allies, they worked together all the time. Sometimes it was just nice to get out of the Senate building or the Republic Executive building to have these conversations. The argument persisted away, longer than it should have. It ended when Padmé told him that Bail was married and he needed to stop being so controlling, or trying to at the very least. Padmé cut deep with the next statement, suggesting that his controlling nature showed how insecure he was. This left Anakin's jaw on the ground, and after it was said, Padmé stormed off. Maybe she was right. Anakin sat down on the couch for a moment and thought about what she had said. Did his jealousy and attempts to control her show that he was actually insecure? He was obviously afraid of losing her, but was that inherently a part of being insecure? Yeah, it is. Anakin was allowing his insecurities to cloud his own judgment. While Padmé was on these outings, Skywalker would pace back and forth, practice his lightsaber vigorously, get frustrated, pace around some more, throw angry music on, stand over a live TV broadcast of a comedic show, pace around some more, look off the balcony, think about leaving the apartment, get ready to leave the apartment, decide it was a bad idea, pace around some more, prepare to leave the apartment, and then she'd show up having accomplished a solid constructive talk, with nothing malicious having been done. Padmé thought about what Anakin could have been doing that was making him so superstitious, or why he was becoming so jealous. She thought back and remembered on Naboo, when he showed signs of jealousy, especially when she mentioned an X in the field. It wasn't super deep either. In the morning, after having slept in different rooms, the two of them would apologize to each other, though Anakin's apology was the more necessary of the two. He had made an error and asked to take her out for breakfast to make up for it, which she was happy to do. When they were there, they talked about the issue that was present and how they could conquer it. Anakin still showed signs of having a hard time opening up about it, but once he finally got everything out, Padmé realized that she didn't really need to apologize. Okay, her response may have been a bit hostile, but it was a correct assessment of what she thought was going on. Padmé expressed her lack of desire to want anyone else or to just cheat. She then simply asked Anakin why he thought she might cheat. He rambled off a couple weird responses, none of them really making any sense in all honesty. As he himself said them, he realized how dumb a couple of them sounded. She told Anakin that he could have ordered a brothel to the apartment in the morning and had it all cleaned up by the time she returned. Anakin inquisitively nodded his head, to which Padmé said she never questioned it because she trusted him. That trust has to go both ways. The reality is that if either of them wanted to cheat, then they just would, and they could just end the relationship here. There'd be no reason to worry about it or try and scold someone for doing something if they were doing it, just move on. But they were married, and while it was a very rushed marriage, Padmé expressed her desire to remain in said marriage. However, if Anakin didn't, then he should just say so. This wasn't a hostile statement, more so just her stating that they were both adults. They could make their own decisions. If he decided to cheat on her, then she wouldn't break her heart over it. Yeah, she'd be upset, but she would just accept that he made a decision and move on from him. This sentiment actually really helped Anakin in his own maturity as an individual. Their relationship would actually start to do so much better from this point forward. Of course, their relationship would do really well from this point forward. Of course, like all relationships, there'd be rocky times and little struggles, but nothing too concerning or bad. Padmé, now being openly married, brought Anakin with her when she left the planet, whether it be to do something requested by the Chancellor or go on diplomacy. Anakin still carried his Jedi weapon, and he was basically the coolest security guard in the galaxy. He could actively use the Force if he wanted, and he continued to train himself daily. There were no more threats to Padmé either, but this also meant Anakin, instead of grueling through the war and eating rations, got to enjoy air conditioning and palaces along with some of the finest delicacies in the galaxy. Over the corresponding months before the first couple state dinners, Anakin's perspective on the Republic would change greatly. Of course, up until that point, it was everything that Palpatine said. But Padmé didn't just feed Anakin her ideas and believe he would just think what she said was automatically right. Instead, she told Anakin about the government, how it worked, and then she told him about the special interest groups, the coalitions, and what they stood for, the delegations, and the several other groups a part of the Republic. She told as much as she could with a non-biased perspective. Once she explained things, she told him where she fit into the puzzle, and as he learned and grasped a mature aspect of the government, his opinions began to drastically change, and by the time they were going to state dinners, he was completely against Palpatine. This also meant that at these state dinners and other whatnots, he was able to keep up with the conversation and listen intently. He began to mature in a way not even he thought was possible for himself. Anakin didn't interject unless he felt necessary. Instead, he resembled a quiet member of the Jedi Council in Plo Koon. He just sat and enjoyed the dinners. During this time, he realized the significance of the Jedi's position in the Republic and why they had it. He didn't pay attention to those lessons inside the Jedi Temple when he was a youngling. The struggle for Anakin was a choice he had to make. As he got closer to Padmé, he realized that he began losing Palpatine. The closer he got to the Chancellor, the more he realized that he began to lose Padmé. It wasn't even that Padmé was trying to force Anakin to not be friends with the Chancellor. As mentioned before, she didn't really care. Anakin was a big boy, he could make his own decisions. However, Palpatine wanted it to appear that she cared. He still expected Padmé and Anakin to have that toxic relationship that they had when they first met, which, when the two of them talked about it, Padmé suggested that maybe Palpatine didn't have Anakin's intentions best at heart. Anakin found this hard to hear, but it was very easy for him to accept, especially after the next budget spend on the clone army. It was a trip that had Anakin meet Mina Bonteri, who helped voice a chance for a peace treaty, though after her death and the bombing on the Coruscant power grid, the Senate ended up approving a bill that would cost the Republic billions of credits at an interest rate provided by the banking clans at 25%. It was a horrendous deal, and Padmé was so heartbroken over a friend's death that Anakin completely disregarded Palpatine. He'd of course spoken to Obi-Wan in this time, but Kenobi had his hands full with the war and his new apprentice, so it was understandable that they didn't talk much. After this event, the war would continue on. While Anakin may have been the missing face on posters around the Republic, the war effort was doing fine without him. He was a part of the 501st, and sure, they may have not had a Jedi anymore, but they were still the 501st. Him not being there didn't make them any worse. Regardless, for another year, everything would run smoothly. Because Anakin and Padmé were enjoying their relationship, there were no sign of kids. They were young. Who doesn't want to have some fun while they're young? Padmé was obviously a senator, so it's not like they would go clubbing, but they still wanted to have fun without little monsters running around. When the war started seemingly coming to an end, the Jedi made a move on the Senate. They decided that without other choices, especially without Skywalker to spy on Palpatine, they made their move. It was perfectly timed too. Nearly 3 hours after they did, the Separatists attacked Coruscant. Palpatine couldn't tell Dooku to reroute, so the Separatists were drawn into a trap. Their ground attack went as planned, but instead of a couple to the side Jedi, General Grievous ran into Mace Windu and was crushed. Windu didn't have time to play games with him, and instead of crushing his lungs, he crushed his chest. It was a painful death for the droid general. Because his flagship, the Invisible Hand, was waiting for him to return, they were counter-assaulted. The majority of the Republic force rerouted and caught the flagship in a bind, which allowed the Republic fleet to completely destroy the ship, killing all of its crew, including Count Dooku. It was one of the luckiest turn of events the Republic could have ever had. Without an assault on Mandalore, Kenobi was also present as well. The death of Dooku and Grievous forced the war into the hands of the Jedi, and they immediately ended it. This did draw outrage from the public and the Senate, but since the war ended within 24 hours of them taking control of the Senate, a lot of people couldn't actually be upset at them. They seriously did a hostile takeover and did what an entire Senate couldn't accomplish in 3 years of active war. Before they were done, they did a deep dive into Palpatine, who was currently locked away inside the Jedi Temple. When they found out the truth, he was never seen from or heard from again. The Jedi weren't responsible, as they made it very clear they never captured any of the senators or politicians or the Chancellor. They simply took control over the Senate to end the war. They secretly did capture Palpatine, but no one needed to know that. They simply took control over the Senate to end the war. The Jedi did release information on the Chancellor and how he's behind everything and so on, which the collective people, now all on one side, were very happy with. And because the Separatist government surrendered to the Republic, they gave the Separatist Council over to the Republic to be tried for their crimes against the galaxy. Anakin and Padmé celebrated with great joy that the war was over. During the middle of the war, they both decided to try something a little edgy, and they did a public stay-in. The two of them didn't leave their beds for a couple of days to protest the ongoing war. It was a huge thing for the tabloids, and it didn't really do much, but it got people talking. With the war over, the Senate turned to the Republic, and Bail Organa, a generational talent within the Senate, was elected to the role of Chancellor. He would undo just about everything Palpatine did and strip money away from the banking clans and their corrupt system. Anakin and Padme shortly after the war took a vacation to Naboo and immediately hightailed it to Alderaan to celebrate Bail's victory. It was an exciting turn of events, and the entire galaxy erupted into celebration. With the war over, the collective tension around the galaxy died down. But there were still people unhappy. Planets were still suffering, and the criminal empire still remained at large. This led Bail Organa to, after redirecting funds to the necessary locations, move the Republic fleets into the Outer Rim. Without a battle over Mandalore, Maul was caught off guard when the Republic showed up at his doorstep, and the Crimson Dawn was crushed in a matter of weeks. Anakin and Padme would continue to foster their growth in their relationship, truly embodying what a married couple should have. They were happy, young, having fun, and enjoying each other's company. It was such a great time for the two of them, and they enjoyed every moment of it. Anakin spent a lot of time at home, but he found different things to do, like volunteering at different groups meant to assist in the relief after the war. This would have him leaving Coruscant and going to planets ravaged by the war. And while he and Padme missed each other, they were able to be separated in a healthy manner. It wouldn't destroy them and it wouldn't cause them suffering. Oh, what a little communication can do for you. They would go on another couple years enjoying the thrill of their late 20s until they saw it as time to have kids. Padme would retire from politics after a life of servitude to the people around the galaxy. When she joined the Senate, it was about to be engulfed in a war. When she left, the Republic was aiding the Outer Rim, removing crime and greed, and in correlation with the Jedi, giving people a new sense of purpose, whether it be citizens or clone troopers. About a year after their return to Naboo, they would begin having children. The first one was a girl named Leia. She'd be the oldest by about 2 years until Luke was born. About a year after his birth, they would decide they were done with the whole kid thing. It was alright, Luke and Leia were more than enough to handle, but in a good way. They had the support of their family and lived in the beautiful countryside of Naboo. The brother and sister would learn how to use the Force like their father. They would never have a need for lightsabers, but from time to time they would steal Dad's lightsaber and chase each other with it. Most specifically, Leia chasing Luke with the lightsaber, threatening to cut his hair. What else do you expect kids to do? It was the best life for the Skywalkers, a life without pain and suffering, without the Sith and war, and a life full of communication, new adventures, love, prosperity, and most of all, each other. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galvin Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, Flynn Vassens, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Mad Maddie Studios, Anakin 003, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, the man with 3 first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. Smash the like button. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patreon, get early access to other things. Let's talk about our story. I wanted to cover the relationship in the story. We've done Obi-Wan's relationship multiple times, and honestly, it was fun doing this story because I've talked about this in the past, but I haven't really been able to focus on it in a story. But this story, I was really able to actually focus on Anakin and Padme's relationship. There's a ton of issues with their relationship, and it's obviously done intentionally by George to make it seem like there's an issue with it, and that's because, you know, Anakin has to turn to the dark side. But like, if they literally just talk to each other, they'd be able to move on. Like, they'd be able to actually get somewhere. And you see that in Revenge of the Sith. Like, they were married for 3 years and didn't have communication. You shouldn't be 3 years deep into a relationship and not be able to open up to somebody. If you are, either you have a toxic partner who doesn't let you communicate, or you are not open about being open. And so if you actually address those issues in a relationship, then your relationship gets to prosper. You know, you get to actually enjoy being in the relationship instead of like wanting to die every 3 seconds. And so when I got to like take their relationship and put it on a pedestal and say, focus on the relationship, they got to be happy. They actually got to be a good married couple. And I always try and communicate that because like they are not a good example of a good relationship. They're a cute ship, but they just not go with each other. They like terrible. Like they met each other after 10 years again, and then they just got married like 4 days after that. That's not a good relationship. And the Clone Wars doesn't show anything of that either. They literally almost got a divorce because Anakin beat someone to death because of his jealousy issues. Now, granted, that was not a thing that should have been going on, but like, you see my point. So I wanted to focus on all those issues that are shown in the relationship. And so anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. Fun little video. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, friends, may the Force be with you.